Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Sandy Hokanson, and I am CEO of Sound Leadership. It is great to have you all with us today. For those of you that are new to the circle, I started this forum about 4 years ago, and we have met 25 times. This is our 25th session, so I'm really thrilled about that. And I created this circle as a way to bring leaders together to inspire and learn from each other. Okay, so leaders inspiring leaders. You can find our previous sessions on my website at soundleadership.ca/resources, and you'll see all the other sessions there. Our last session was on leading digital transformation, and we had our special guest was Marcus Sawyer, founder and CEO of the EQ community. If you haven't had a chance to listen in on that, please take some time to do so. It was a really interesting conversation on what digital transformation is and isn't, and how it's affecting all of us today. So today, we have got a really great guest with us. Today we're going to speak about supply chain disruption and how best to navigate that for leaders. And we're all experiencing this. We're experiencing this as consumers. We're experiencing this as leaders. We're experiencing this as suppliers into our clients, and we're experiencing this as customers as well. So my special guest today is Martino Brambilla, and he's founder and CEO of Embassy Ingredients. And I've known Martino for 18 years. Martino and I met through the Young Presidents Organization, and we were actually forum mates for several years. So Martino is a true entrepreneur, a risk taker, and what I call a professional leader. So he invests in his own development and the development of his team. And today he leads a vibrant, energized organization that they're all a little food crazy at Embassy Ingredients, big passion for food. They specialize in flavor and bakery ingredients, and he supplies the Americas. So Martino is experiencing supply chain disruptions from all angles that he's going to share with us today. And he's going to share his experiences, but also some ways that have helped him navigate through what's going on today. So welcome, Martino. It's great to be have you here.
Thank you, Sandy. I didn't realize it was 18 years. So did we actually meet when we were 10 years old?
I think so. I think that's what happened. We were school buddies way back when.
Absolutely, it has been that long. So
I was adding it up today, and I was surprised myself that it feels like yesterday.
Oh, it has been a while. No, but thank you very much for the introduction, Sandy.
Okay, welcome. Let's get started. So why don't you tell all of us here today a little bit about what your company does, so they have some context about the organization that you lead and what you're dealing with.
Well, Embassy Ingredients, we've been in business for 42 years now. So I thought I'd been through all the experiences of recessions and boom markets, but I guess I'm learning new things over the last 2 years. But we supply business to business, but indirectly we're behind the scenes for a lot of the sweets and the bagels that you might be buying from your local Tim Hortons store or your Starbucks, or when you go to Costco or Loblaws and you're buying cakes or bagels or bread items. So we manufacture flavors that make the product taste exactly the way you would like it to taste, and we make the industrial version, you might say, of the Duncan Hines cake mix. So we manufacture what industries would use to make their muffins and so on. So we're all over Canada and the United States. We're exporting to Central and South America and all the way to the Middle East. So supply chain wise, on the sales side, we have quite a long reach. And also for ingredients, we bring ingredients in from all over the world, and from Asia to from all over the Americas to Europe and so on.
Okay, thank you for that. That gives everyone the global context of what you're dealing with. So let's dig into the disruption that we're all talking about and experiencing, and discuss kind of how wide ranging it is for your perspective. What's really most affected, what industries, and perhaps even what geographies?
Well, the geography is basically about everywhere. In the old, we used to be able to, there's a disruption, isolate, okay, this area is being affected. But to put it in context in our company, we produce over 1,000 SKUs. We also purchase well over 1,000 SKUs from all over the world. And whenever one item is missing, you can't produce the final product. So if you got 30 ingredients and one's missing, well, you have to figure out how to make the product without that one ingredient, which is usually not possible. And how do you get that ingredient in? Now, the disruption in supply chain, the problem is right now, with the recovery from COVID, is that a lot of things are broken in the supply chain. It's not just one event. Like COVID is one event, and then the recovery started happening and consumption was different. So it stretched the supply chain limits beyond, you might say, their normal capacity, because it's built for a certain amount of increase, had a little bit of buffer, and the demand at the consumer level exceeded that buffer that the supply chain had. But then what compounded it and what makes it so difficult to fix is that a lot of black swan events happen on top of that. So there've been droughts, there've been hurricanes, there've been freezing temperatures in Texas, which have damaged factories. There've been strikes. So the thing is that the supply chain is getting disrupted in many different areas and breaking down in a lot of different sectors. This is not just one thing to fix, it's many things to fix. And all of those compounded, there's no easy solution right now that anybody is aware of. So I can give you some examples. Like 15% of the world's container ships right now are at anchor waiting to be unloaded. So at a time that everybody needs every container ship in action because everything's being stretched, 15% of the world's capacity is not even in action. They're just waiting at a port, waiting to be unloaded. After they're getting unloaded, it used to take maybe 48 hours to get the product off the yard and onto the clients. Now it's taking an average of 6 weeks. So all of that time lag now has reduced the capacity of supply chain rather than increasing it, and compounding the problem right at the same time that we need to expand it. So when Biden announced that he wants the port of LA to run 24 hours a day, that was basically window dressing. All the storage that they would have when they unload the ship, if they're operating 24 hours a day, is all full. So even though they're unloading the ship, they have nowhere to put it. So that's the dilemma that we're facing right now. Whenever anything is traveling anywhere, either by road or by rail or by boat. One thing that one of our clients is facing right now is that even though his container was unloaded, it went on rail, but one of the rail companies is so backlogged, they turned one of their intermodal facilities into a storage yard and accumulated thousands of containers in that storage yard because they can't get to them. And then they told all their customers it will take at least 2 months before they start taking the containers out of that storage yard. So even though the product entered the country, it'll take my client now 2 months to get access to his container. So when you're going to Walmart or any retailer and you find that the store shelf is empty, it could be in that rail yard, waiting to be unloaded. So the supply chain has been very, very stretched that way, and there's no relief in sight in expanding the capacity in the near future. So the backlog is just increasing right now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing that I think everyone kind of wants to hear is, when will this get better? How soon will this get better? And how will it get better? And from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like there is an easy solution around the corner.
No one's come up with a solution yet, and I don't want to make people think it's all bad news, but things that are happening that are taking into effect now is that in the US there's some vaccine mandates. So that's taking an extra 800 truckers off the road. And that is creating the shortage of truckers is becoming even worse. the Port of Los Angeles, which has been in the news, they're going into union negotiations next year. And the port wants to automate further, just like the ports in Hong Kong are automated and other ports in the world are automated. And the union already mentioned that they're going to strike against the automation, and they're going to start work to rule in March if the port wants to automate. And that'll reduce the capacity of the port another 30%. So the news coming in for next year is actually worse than what we have currently. So the prognosis is that next year may actually be worse than this year for supply chain.
That's a hard pill to swallow for everybody, and for leaders like yourself that are on the front lines, dealing with this day-to-day disruption and managing through it, leading through it. It is a whole new crisis management, really it is. And it's, you know, you're just getting through the one situation, and as you say, they're related. You know, they're all kind of bumping into each other, these events. But it is, let's talk a little bit about how it's been affecting your organization. So, you know, this idea that you've been dealing with this, and on top of the pandemic and the continued issues there, and then now facing probably going into 2022 with really no relief, potentially other black swan events. How does it affect first of all, talk about the organization first, and then I'd like to have you share about your team and you as the leader.
One kind of thing that everybody should not, like, even though the news doesn't seem like it's going to be positive next year, you shouldn't just sit back and just say, look, what happens is what happens. There are many things you can do to be proactive to minimize the supply chain. For example, we have a major raw material that we bring in. And it's not imported, it's actually made domestically, but the events that triggered the shortage has been hurricanes down in the southern US, and also freezing temperatures in Texas that broke the pipes in the factory. So the supply chain completely broke for this item. 12 months ago, we were paying $2 a kilo for this item. Now it's being charged at $6 a kilo. And it's like liquid gold if you can even get it. So what we've done for supply chain is that we've never had to do before. It's not only look for dual supply, which I would advise everybody to start looking for dual supply for any resources or any raw materials or finished goods that they purchase, but also looking for dual supply. We analyzed, okay, does this other supplier use the same raw material to manufacture? Are they in the same geographic region that if a hurricane hits, they're going to go down at the same time as the other vendor? Do they have the same infrastructure usage? Are they both rail, or is one trucking and one rail? So we're looking at all the redundancies beyond just having a second supplier. So I would advise everybody to start negotiating with your vendors, looking at new vendors, looking at dual supply, trying to guarantee supply as much as possible. Even though prices seem high right now, they might get worse next year. So if you can lock in supply now, even at a higher price, at least you're guaranteed you're going to get it or have a higher chance, and you'll be higher on the priority list. So there are many things that you can do to improve the situation rather than just waiting for it to happen to you. And you know what, this is all happening while there's a shortage of staff throughout North America. That's compounded the situation. All my clients in the US, my own company, we're always trying to hire people right now. We're short of staff, which means that the people that are in the company, especially with all this extra workload to get supply and getting the supply chain working, there's more stress on everyone on a daily basis. So you're trying to deal with this at the same time as managing workload stress, work-life balance. There's a lot of balls up in the air, but you have to make sure that at the end of it, what's happening is happening. You cannot affect what's happening outside your company. So you basically have to be at the moment. You can't dwell too much about why is this happening, why is that happening. Where you are is where you are. There's nothing you can do to change it. What you do have an effect on is where you will be and how you can minimize the effect it's going to have on your work life, your business life, your company, and also your personal life. Because this is affecting all three aspects when it comes to supply chain, and your favorite dish at the restaurant isn't in stock.
Now that becomes personal for a foodie like you.
Well, the one thing that I'm happy is that the supply of wine into my household has not had any supply chain issues. Because that's the one thing that really helps out when you go home.
I'm sure. So I'm glad you touched on, so it sounds like the organization is adapting by coming up with strategies like dual supply, like looking at the redundancies, like cross-referencing the way of transport with geography, with, you know, as many things as you can, with as many factors as you can, to make sure that you have as much, you know, rounded out supply as possible. And then even making decisions to lock in supply, perhaps even at a higher rate. Those are all good things, but I'm really glad you also touched on the fact that the people, which we're in a labor shortage as well, that's another supply chain disruption, of course, is people. And, you know, and how much stress that puts on all the layers of the organization and the people themselves, right? And so from a leadership point of view, you've talked about you cope by staying in the moment, which I love that, because I talk a lot about, you know, the circle of what you can control, what you can influence, what you can't control. And we've got to kind of recognize the things in our world that we can't control, but stay as much as we can and control and influence. But it has been tough, right? And so are there other things that, like one thing I wanted to ask was, what percentage of time prior to this scenario did you spend on supply chain versus how much time you spend now?
Well, in the past, maybe I spent 5% of my time on supply chain, usually when all the contracts have to get signed at the end of the year and negotiating pricing for large volume items that we negotiate once or twice a year. Now I spend probably 30% of my time on supply chain, because in a way, we don't really need sales in terms of going to clients. The situation in our industry and in many industries, whether you're in food or outside, if you have the raw material to make the product, you can sell it. All you have to do is announce to the industry saying, I can make this, you'll get 10 phone calls. We probably are turning down more business now than we're trying to get from clients, because clients are coming to us, can we make this, can we make that, and we have no ingredients to make it with.
Right. And I want to follow up. I have a follow-up question on that, but I want to ask you, so you've gone from 5% to 30%. So what has fallen out? What are you not able to do as a leader because you're taking on 30% now of, or are you just adding to your day?
Well, part of it is adding to the day. Part of it is I'm spending less time on the sales side of the business. But again, when you don't have the ingredients to increase the sales, what's the point of trying to bring on the new customer that you cannot supply? So I'm maintaining the client relationships, like that's being maintained and so on, but the sales have been taking a back seat, because what we're doing is that we're protecting our current business with our current accounts, because that's the number one priority before we seek out new business. Right. And because we have been doing, we might say, an above average job compared to the industry and getting supply in of our ingredients, most of our accounts are purchasing much more than last year. So we're able to increase sales with our current accounts, and their sales are increasing only because the product that's beside them is out of stock. So when a customer goes and wants to buy a muffin, they might be the only muffin on the shelf. So now they're getting the sale by default, so their sales have doubled because we're able to supply them, whereas my competition is not supplying the other bakery.
Right, right. Yeah, so this is a very interesting situation, really. And I guess one of the questions that comes to mind is, how do you keep your sales team motivated through this? What is their role shift to? Obviously, there's a lot of dialogue with the clients about education, I'm sure, and what's happening, and delivery and all of these things that are quite challenging. So they have lots to do, I know, but how do you, as a leader, salespeople want to sell, right? So it sounds like you're shifting and selling more, like the muffin that's available, but tell me a little bit about the impact on the sales team.
It's not great because even for me, like, you're not doing what's in your blood and ingrained to do. Like, we are actually getting thank you emails from customers to even maintain the production that we're maintaining sometimes. We're getting an intense cooperation, even customers even helping us find ingredients to keep their production going, and we're working hand in hand with them trying to source an ingredient that we're missing. So we've had many instances of that, but there's no perfect solution on how to keep the people motivated, but it's beyond sales. Like, we have R&D that is reformulating products on a daily basis rather than creating new items which they enjoy more. We're reformulating using ingredients available rather than ingredients that we should be using, or are the primary ingredient that we normally would use. So every department is getting affected, not just the sales side. And it's a balancing act on how to motivate them, how to keep everybody happy, because one thing in today's environment with the labor shortage, everybody on this call should know that every A player in their company is probably being called by recruiters on a weekly basis. And one of our jobs is not only to manage the business and making sure that the sales are getting out, but also how do you keep that balance where you're communicating to the company, you're making sure everybody knows what's happening, and you're managing the workload and you're managing the stress levels. But there's no perfect balance. For right now, to put it in context, and this is related to supply chain and labor shortages. Like, we're going through probably the largest recall I've seen in the baking industry in many years. One of our vendors supplied us product that was contaminated, so we're going through a recall. It's the first time in 42 years that my company has had a recall, which is not something I would wish upon my worst enemy. And it's putting a huge strain on our resources. Our competition is recalling their items, we're recalling the items, but this is all related with a supply chain which is stretched to its limits. And when anything is stretched to its limits, mistakes happen. And these things are happening throughout the chain. And when you're going to go to your grocery store shortly, you're going to be seeing a lot of baked goods that are missing from the store shelf. But again, you try to manage as well the best that you can. And again, going back to being in the moment, what's happening is what's happening. You can't change that. Is how do you react and how do you make the right decisions? And sometimes the right decision has to be made in, you've got 5 minutes to make the right call. And you have to make the right call, live with it, and move on.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot to deal with. And I know that you've pulled off some amazing feats for clients here. And you said you're getting some thank you notes. Can you tell us a few examples? I mean, obviously without disclosing, but I know you've been doing lots of interesting things to help get product to clients.
Yeah, yes, for example, like almost everybody in my industry right now, and this applies to outside food, is on allocation. So basically what that means that if you purchase a certain amount last year, that's all you're allowed to purchase this year. And that applies outside the food industry. That applies to friends I have that have other companies. So when sales go up, you can't supply increased volume, and nobody likes that. So we're coming up with some very ingenious ways on making the ingredients last longer and substituting with other ingredients that are available without compromising product quality or introducing new labeling requirements and so on. And that also comes with the entrepreneurial blood in our company. And that's actually generating some excitement that we're able to figure out how to make double what we made last year with the same amount of raw material because we were able to find something else somewhere to use instead. And some of our competition, which might be bigger and technically has more resources, their decision-making, it takes longer. Their approval process take a lot longer, so they're not reacting as fast. And that's why we're able to keep our customers in business, whereas some of our competition isn't.
Yeah, agility. I know I've been hearing a lot from your team about the agility and the amazing things they pulled off. So I think that that's a good note for everyone to take away, that, you know, we talk about agility a lot as one of the new skills that is so required. But when you're facing the situations that we're facing as leaders, we have to have people that can turn on a dime, that can think outside the box, that can come up with something new, that can take something that they used to do and be, you know, and be in a situation where that's not available to them anymore. They don't have that to rely on. So they really have to be creative and innovative. And I know your team has done a very good job of that. But again, that takes time and effort too, right? And that takes extra resources to do that. So what do you, I guess what I'm going to ask you two different ways here. So what do you fear most about this? Like, what is the kind of like keeps you up at night that you are really concerned about? Is it the length of time? Is it that it's going to get worse? What is it that is the most challenging right now?
I'm not sure if fear is the right word, because one thing that applies to my company and any company out there, no matter what field they're in right now, is that it's happening to everyone. So everyone is in the same boat. Everyone's in the same ocean right now. So it's not like this is happening to me, I can't get supply, and everybody else has it, so I'm losing all my clients. That's something that should never enter your mind, because that's not the case. Everybody's prices have gone up. Everybody's supply chain is being stretched. It's a universal issue that's not even countrywide or continent-wide, but it's global. So I don't think there's any fear. There's just worries about, are we making the right decisions? Are we going in the right path? And you don't have time to make decisions. Right now, you don't have the luxury of, I'm going to analyze this for 4 or 5 days and then make my mind up. There's no luxury for that. You have to do decisions quickly, or else that raw material that was available 10 minutes ago is gone. Or the commodity price has gone up 10% because you didn't book it. So I wouldn't say there's any fear. There's worries. Yeah, am I sleeping at night as normally as I do? Absolutely not. But the thing is that there's a lot of this, more is because my mind's racing about, okay, what will I do tomorrow? Okay, what do I need to take care of? What's the things that are the most urgent? What can wait, and so on. That's what's mostly keeping me up at night, more than fear of, oh my God, what's going to happen. That's really not it. And then also, I think one job of all of us as leaders, if you're leading a company or even leading a department, is remember, your staff is watching you. Everybody from the shipper receiver to the receptionist to the accounts payable person, everybody's looking at your moves. Everybody's looking at your expressions. You can't have fear. As soon as they see fear, then fear will migrate through your whole company and everything's going to grind to a halt. The best thing, if you are experiencing fear, don't go to the office that day or close your office door. Regain your composure and then come out to your troops. You have to be the leader. You have to be the captain of the ship.
Very good wisdom there, advice for everyone. It's going to happen. It does happen. And especially when you get a few events, happening at the same time, you could go into that really stressed to the point of overload. And that is a good time to take a break, to change your view, to really get yourself kind of together before you go back into it. One of the things that you've mentioned several times is the speed, the decision-making speed that leaders are faced with now, and the decisions you're making kind of like urgently, and you only have a couple minutes to decide if, you should secure this inventory. Tell us a little bit about, is this just a gut instinct here? Is your entrepreneurial nature? What are some of the things that you can perhaps share with us as to how best to guide that speed?
It's having a real touch on the business. It's maybe getting a lot more operational than I used to be before COVID hit. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example of something that requires speed. Is that the recall happens that we are in the midst of right now, and the next day's production would be using all the remaining raw material that we have of that product that is not on the recall list. And so you have sometimes only an hour to say stop production, make that product or the other product, reformulate to stretch this product for lasting longer. You can't wait till, okay, I'll decide tomorrow what to do because production will have used it all up. You've got 30 minutes to stop production and regroup and make the right decision. In our case, we stopped production. We produced things that didn't use this product for 2 days while we reformulated, while we regrouped and prioritized our production, and then restarted again. But that decision had to get made in about 30 minutes or else it would have been too late. It would have been in process. Mm-hmm.
Something keeps coming to my mind here as well about, there's something about having seasoned operators on the floor, seasoned operators in the business, whatever the business is. There's one thing to look at things with new eyes. We need a little of that too, but there definitely is some operational savvy that's required here to really kind of, understand the nuances and the decision points that have to be met. I guess I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of an advantage to people that have a few years of leadership under their belt here in their industry, right? Because there's a lot going on, and you can, you know your business so well, you can get out there and help the plant leadership make those critical decisions, but you have to be operational to know what they are and how to do it.
Oh, absolutely. Having people with experience does help, but it comes with a double-edged sword. Because with seasoned people, you also have to make sure that you're not ingrained in the old way of doing things. When things mm-hmm. change very quickly, I remember an example I can cite is from a management book I read about an example in the Second World War, is that when they were building airplanes for the Air Force, the best plant managers were the ones that were brand new, because the older plant managers, when something went wrong, they would try to fix the part and slow down the production line and use the old methodology of things had to get fixed and then installed in the plane, and the planes would get slowed down. Whereas the new managers that were trained on speed because of the war effort would just throw the part away and put in a new one that worked. So seasoned operators help, but you have to make sure that the seasoned operators are aware of the new way of working and are not attached to the old way of working if new rules need to be applied.
Yeah, yes, and hence the new eyes on things and agility to pivot and move. And one thing that I've always admired in you is you believe, like I do, that the best leaders are both teachers and students. And you've been a student not only of leadership, but also of your profession. And I think all of us need to be students of our profession all the time. Okay, so I want to open it up for some questions before we'll have you wrap up with some of your key takeaways. But let's, I know we've got one question in chat that's come in, and I wonder if there's any other questions out there. You can unmute and ask the question if you'd like as well in this section of the circle. And if I don't have anyone that wants to unmute, I will go to the chat. Any questions out there for Martino? Okay, let's kick everyone off with, okay, Brad's got his hand up. Go ahead, Brad. Great to see you, by the way.
Great to see you too. Thank you so much for this. Oh my gosh. This explains so much, Martino. Of all the e-commerce stuff and whatever Christmas shopping I haven't done yet, I'm doing immediately upon
do it now.
One of the questions that was really striking with me, and you touched it a little bit, but I was wondering if there's anything else that you would share on it. It's how to, it's very hard to say no to clients. And it sounds like you've been doing a great job in trying to manage all that. But is there anything new that you've found or something that you think is working really well in maintaining those current relationships when you just know that you can't serve them the way that they would like to be or the way that you would want? So more about how do you keep your existing clients happy when you can't deliver everything? Any comments around that?
Well, one part of it is because, and the thing is, I'm really close to this because I started this company from the very beginning, and I have a lot of long-term clients that are small clients that we supply. So it's very difficult decisions. But part of going through this is triage. You only have a finite amount of raw materials, and now you have to look at the future of your company. What companies do you want to have when you exit? And what companies do you need to maybe stop supplying? Because you have to allocate the raw materials to the ones that are going to help you grow once this thing is over. And some very tough decisions have to be made. Like companies may not be able to supply everyone anymore. It's not about delaying everybody's order. It's about sometimes saying these people will never get their product because we're not going to produce for them. And we're going to allocate all our resources and raw materials to these customers, and we're going to give as good service as we can to them rather than bad service to everyone. And it's tough decisions. Like, I hate doing those decisions because sometimes you're shutting down a whole section of a customer's business.
Yeah. Everything I've heard in the conversation today is just very, very practical and I think very wise. So again, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad. Great question. Okay, let's go to the chat. This is from Gerald Mitchell. Gerald, it's great to hear your name and have you join us today. If you had a crystal ball, how far out do you believe we will continue to have a supply chain challenge? The question on everyone's mind.
Well, I remember everybody in the summertime was saying, oh, everything will be perfect by January. Everybody seems that things will solve by calendar year and everything gets really well. Right now, people are saying that this is going to resolve itself sometime in 2023. So I'll give you an example. We are trying to do supply agreements with new vendors, and they're telling me they will not sign a contract for any product before 2023. So that tells me supply chain will not get back to normal until 2023 at least. When in 2023, again, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of different factors. Will demand go down on products because of the price inflation you're seeing? That's going to be a wild card that we don't know. So if demand goes down, the supply chain will catch up because the price increases are going to start hitting next year. My average price increase from my vendors right now is 20%. So you're going to be seeing your food costs at grocery stores going up between 5 and 20, 30%, depending what you're buying? And will that impact demand? That's going to be the question.
That's you know, we kind of don't want the economy to lose steam, right? We kind of don't want demand to go away either, because you want to be able to be ready when it gets a little back to normal and be easier, whatever normal is. I think some of us have forgotten what normal is now, because we've just had one thing after the other. But that's very important to think about as well, is that I think all the things you've been talking about is we've got to sustain this for a while longer here. You've got to, you know, the adjustments you're making with your team, you know, the making sure your team's stress level is handled, you know, making sure your clients are with you through this, all of these things we're talking about, all the adjustments you're making, and, you know, and every industry, we're talking about food today, but this is really, you know, microchips, you know, we know how many industries are short of key products, right? And how many things, you know, try to get an appliance, right? With a chip in it, try to get cars, try to get, you know, someone in my family's trying to buy a car for, you know, 5 times, and every time she's paid and bought the car, tries to get the car just mysteriously doesn't show up. So, you know, you just can't get these things that we're all dealing with. So it's sustaining ourselves. You know, we're all gearing up to sustain ourselves through the pandemic, and now we're coming, you know, that's still lingering around a little bit, but we're coming, I would say, like to say, to the end. But we're in this, and in as I think Martina alluded to as well, is there's the climate pieces that are happening. A lot of the things you shared at the beginning were climate related, and we know that is not going to change. That is we're heading into that, and that is affecting all of these pieces. So we're going to be wrapping up, and I wanted to, Martina, throw it over to you just for the last couple minutes here. To just, what do you want to leave everyone with today on the phone? Are there a couple nuggets you want to just really emphasize before we wrap up?
You know what, it's like, it's not all doom and gloom. There's definitely challenges, and I think I mentioned the challenges, but there are going to be people buying goods. The economy will recover, and it's a matter of making the right decisions and keeping in mind this is not a 100-yard sprint that we're in, it's a marathon. So I know for a fact, I'm not doing 100% of it, but make sure that you don't burn yourself out too early, because you're going to be facing these challenges until next year. Pace yourself, make the right decisions, and guide your company or your department, depending if you're leading your company or are working within a company, and advise on making the right decisions, and look at what the climate is out there. We are going to get through this. There's going to be an exit, like there always is. And it's a matter of taking it one day at a time and tackling the problems as they come along. Like as I'm saying to some people, sometimes it feels like it's whack-a-mole. Every day I come in and all these things are popping up, and so far we're winning. We're beating them down faster than they pop up.
Oh, I love that. I've got that image in my mind of you playing that crazy game. I love those comments. Great way to close. So stay in the moment, be present, don't burn yourself out. We'll get through this. Really, really wise words to close today. Martina, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I think some of the data you shared with us at the beginning have opened a few eyes of leaders on the call. And I think that we're going to be better prepared for this. So for what lies ahead. So I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining today. If you want to be a speaker on the circle, please reach out to me, and I'll keep you posted on when our next circle is. Until then, lead well, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.